It was 2012, and my best friend Hannah had finally found her dream car. She was obsessed with it, a second-hand Suzuki Vitara, 2 doors, purplish in color. Personally, I didn't understand her obsession, but Hannah was like a sister to me. We had been inseparable since childhood, traveling the world together, always chasing adventure. So when she asked me to come with her on a 900-kilometer trip to the far north of Sweden to buy it, of course I said yes. We were 21 at the time, recently back from Asia. The man selling the car agreed to meet us at a small airport in a town called Nomia. It was late morning when we landed. The first snow of the season had just begun to fall, thick, heavy flakes drifting across an almost empty parking lot. That's where I first saw him, the seller. He was standing by the Vitara, dressed head to toe like a hunter. Now, in the north of Sweden, that isn't strange. People live off the land, hunting, fishing, trapping. But something about him put me on edge. Still, he was polite. He smiled, waved, shook our hands. He pointed out the little flaws on the car, showed us paperwork, even bragged about the recent engine work. He was almost too transparent, too forthcoming. Like he wanted to prove he had nothing to hide. The snow was thickening now, the cold biting through our coats. He opened the car door and said, "I got the rest of the paperwork at home. Let's close the deal over some coffee." Against my instincts, I followed Hannah inside. It was a 2-door car, which meant both of us were now trapped in the back seat. My gut screamed that something was wrong. I didn't know why. I couldn't explain it, but I knew. He kept talking as he drove. About the stereo, about the features, about the wildlife, the snow, the people we passed. He never shut up, which was strange because Northerners are known for being quiet, only speaking when necessary. And then I realized something. We weren't heading toward town. No traffic, no houses, no sign of civilization. Instead, he was driving us deeper and deeper into the vast wilderness. I glanced at Hannah. She was listening, smiling politely, no concern on her face at all. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was fine. But then I noticed the road. Empty, endless, forest on either side. Nobody knew where we were. Finally, the car pulled up outside a small wooden cottage. No neighbors, no other houses. The only building we had passed was a tiny cabin further back on the road, and it looked abandoned. He led us inside, still talking, still filling the air with useless chatter. But when the door closed behind us, his tone shifted. I heard it in Hannah's voice too. That sharp edge. She was starting to feel it, that something wasn't right. "I'll put the kettle on," he said. And as he passed Hannah, he let his hand brush her hair. Smiling smugly. That was the moment I knew. "May I use the bathroom?" I asked, my voice calm, steady. I stepped into the tiny bathroom, washed my hands, and then saw it in the stained mirror. Something tucked behind the water heater. A rolled-up plastic folder. I pulled it out, opened it. My blood went cold. Pages and pages of violent porn cut from magazines, glued onto paper. Around them, scraps of handwritten notes. A story, a horrifying fantasy, about a woman lured into a car, told she could buy it cheaply, and then the story turned into torture, into horror, into death. I froze. Then I remembered something Hannah and I had joked about years ago. A code word, something to say if we ever needed to get out of a situation. We had never needed it before. Until now. I walked back into the room, looked straight at Hannah, and I said, "Potatoes. You forgot to buy potatoes. And we really need some." Her eyes locked on mine. She understood instantly. "The sooner the better," I replied. Without hesitation, Hannah, beautiful, charming, clever Hannah, smiled at the man and said casually, "Excuse me, but could I take another look at the cam belt?" He grunted, muttered something about it being fine, and tossed her the keys. We didn't wait. We got in that car, slammed the doors, and sped off through the snow. Faster than the roads allowed. Faster than was safe. But we didn't care. We abandoned the car at the airport. Afraid he'd come after us. Afraid he'd call the police. Afraid of everything. But he never followed. Never reported it. Nothing. We left on the train instead. Later, Hannah asked what made me say the code word. And I told her. About the folder. The pictures. The notes. Maybe it was just a fantasy. Maybe he never would have acted on it. But in that moment, I was sure we would die if we didn't leave. And the truth is, if Hannah and I hadn't joked about that code word years before, if we hadn't known what it meant the moment I said it, things could have ended very differently. Sometimes, all it takes is one word to save your life. I was 24 years old, and I had fallen in love with national parks. So much so that I took a full-time job inside one and worked there for 3 years. It was one of the best choices I ever made. I met incredible people, experienced beautiful places, but it also brought me face to face with some of the sketchiest individuals I've ever encountered. One of them was Sam. Sam was tall, shaved head, glasses. The kind of coworker who lingered awkwardly a little too long, who stood too close, smiled too wide, made everyone just slightly uncomfortable. Not enough to file a complaint, but enough to keep your distance. The biggest problem? He had a drinking issue. He'd show up to work still drunk, get sent home, then somehow keep his job. At the time, I didn't think much of him. Just a socially awkward guy with a drinking problem. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Months later, I had transferred to a new location. Better pay, better team. Life was good. Then one morning, I'm in the break room, scrolling through my feed when my phone lights up, 5 messages in under 3 minutes. It was Sam. I hadn't spoken to him outside of work ever, so seeing his name already threw me off. But what he wrote chilled me. He was ranting about my friends, accusing me of being tainted because I had male friends. At first, I rolled my eyes, but then the tone shifted. The words turned darker. He told me that I should die, that my friends should die, and that he'd be more than happy to end our misery. I was shocked, angry, but mostly scared. I reported it to HR. They told me to block him, and they'd investigate. They also suggested I alert authorities. So I did. But when the park rangers read the messages, they seemed almost annoyed I had called. I filed a statement anyway. That night, I came home to find trash scattered all over my front steps. At first, I thought it was raccoons, until I saw the note. "Watch your back, bitch." I froze. The next day, my sister, who shared the cabin with me, called while I was at work. She was shaken. She told me that a man matching Sam's description had come by. He asked about me, where I was. When she played dumb, he said, "I'll be back to get her later." And then he left. She said he reeked of alcohol and had this coldness in his voice. That's when I knew this wasn't just workplace drama. This was dangerous. I called security and had them escort her to safety. Park rangers got involved again. They confirmed Sam lived only 2 minutes down our street. 2 minutes. They said they'd keep an eye out. But Sam disappeared. Nobody had seen him since the threats began, until his roommate finally called. Sam had stumbled home drunk, and they brought him into HR. I thought, good. Finally, he'll be fired. But after the meeting, they gave him a final warning. He would keep his job. He would keep living 2 minutes away. I was furious, shocked, but I tried to calm down. For 3 days, it was quiet. No messages, no trash, no notes. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then the Rangers came to my door. Sam's roommate had reported him again. Sam had tried to convince him to lure me to a secluded spot so he could take care of me. That night, I came home to find trash scattered all over my front steps. At first, I thought it was raccoons, until I saw the note. "Watch your back, bitch." I froze. The next day, my sister, who shared the cabin with me, called while I was at work. She was shaken. She told me that a man matching Sam's description had come by. He asked about me, where I was. When she played dumb, he said, "I'll be back to get her later." And then he left. She said he reeked of alcohol and had this coldness in his voice. That's when I knew this wasn't just workplace drama. This was dangerous. I called security and had them escort her to safety. Park rangers got involved again. They confirmed Sam lived only 2 minutes down our street. 2 minutes. They said they'd keep an eye out. But Sam disappeared. Nobody had seen him since the threats began, until his roommate finally called. Sam had stumbled home drunk, and they brought him into HR. I thought, good. Finally, he'll be fired. But after the meeting, they gave him a final warning. He would keep his job. He would keep living 2 minutes away. I was furious, shocked, But I tried to calm down. For 3 days it was quiet. No messages. No trash. No notes. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then the Rangers came to my door. Sam's roommate had reported him again. Sam had tried to convince him to lure me to a secluded spot so he could take care of me. Rangers searched his cabin. They found a loaded firearm and a handwritten note describing in detail how he was going to kill me. That was it. He was banned from all U.S. national parks, forced to leave within 24 hours. I moved to another state, changed my number, and tried to move on. Sam has since contacted me once, bragging that I helped him qualify for unemployment. I turned that over to the Rangers immediately. Last I heard, he's restricted to a county in southern Arizona because of other crimes he committed. But even now, years later, I still don't understand why he targeted me. We barely knew each other, hardly spoke. Maybe it was his instability, maybe the drinking, maybe something darker. But I'll never forget how close I came to becoming a name and a headline. When I was 16, my parents let me bring my boyfriend, we'll call him Mitch, on a family camping trip. It shocked me that they even agreed. Normally, we weren't allowed to hang out alone. But this campsite had always been a tradition for my family. And since it was the very last season before the ground would close forever, they must have felt generous. The first day was perfect. Mitch and I spent hours walking trails, catching lizards, splashing in the water, and talking about creepy internet stories. We even wandered far enough to find a handful of cabins about 4 miles away. That night, my parents built a big fire. They cracked open drinks. Mitch and I tried to make s'mores and laughed nervously while I told my parents about the rake. It was silly, but we were already on edge from all the creepy stories. And then Mitch suddenly gasped. A man was walking down the dirt road, from the direction of those distant cabins. It was strange. For miles in the dark, just a walk. My dad called out, "Hey, how's it going?" But the man didn't answer. He just kept walking silently, step by step, until he was right at our fire. Finally, he said, "Hey there, folks. Just like to walk down from my cabin, see if anyone's camping." And then he sat down. My parents, drunk, maybe high, welcomed him like an old friend. They laughed with him about how sad it was that the campsite was closing. But Mitch and we were staring at each other, whispering about how weird it was. The guy's zipper was down. His boxer shorts stuck out beneath his cargo shorts. And he wouldn't look at us. Not once. He only spoke to my parents, but every so often his eyes would flick to us across the flames. Then Mitch leaned closer and whispered, "He's copying them." And I realized he was right. The man had started mimicking my parents, slurring his words, wobbling like he was drunk, laughing too loud. It was like he was trying to blend into their state. We pretended to rummage at the cooler just to put a few feet between us and him. And that's when he finally shifted the conversation. He asked my parents if this was a double date. They laughed and explained that I was their daughter and Mitch was my boyfriend. The man smiled strangely and asked how old we were. They told him, 16 and 18. And then he asked the question that made my blood run cold. "Well, where are they going to sleep tonight?" My stomach dropped. Mitch squeezed my arm so tight, I thought he'd leave a bruise. To my parents, drunk and hazy, it didn't register as odd. But the way he said it, the tone, it was laced with something suggestive, something dark. Even my mom looked unsettled now, staring at me with wide, questioning eyes. The man pushed further. "I see one tent. Where's the other one?" My dad, barely awake, waved lazily toward the trees and said, "That one's ours, and theirs is way over there." The man perked up immediately. He leaned forward, grinning, and pointed at my parents' tent. "So that's your tent?" Then he asked again, "Where exactly was ours?" Mitch and I couldn't take it anymore. We told my parents we were going for a walk. And though the woods were pitch black, we left. We pulled out our phones, desperate for signal. Nothing. I typed a long message to my best friend, describing the man, the time, the place, everything, praying the phone would send it when it caught signal. When we returned, the man was gone. We whispered to my parents, "Where is he?" They said he had left for his cabin. But he hadn't passed us on the road. That meant he had gone somewhere else. Finally, We spilled everything. About his zipper being down. About him copying their drunkenness. About how obsessed he was with knowing where we would sleep. My mom admitted she felt the same. Even my dad, through his haze, said he'd gotten a creepy vibe. That night, Mitch and I dragged our entire tent, all our stuff inside, and shoved it right up against my parents' tent. We didn't sleep. Every crunch of a leaf, every rustle of wind, felt like he was coming back. And maybe he had been watching us all along.